Hi, everyone. This is Rico Figliolini, host of Peachtree Corners Life here in our little smart city just north of Atlanta. And I have a great guest today, Eric Christ, who's City Council Person at Large. Hey, Eric, thanks for joining us.
Great to be here, Rico. Thanks for having me.
Yep, we're going to be discussing quite a few things. So stick around. But before we get into it, I just want to say thank you to two of our sponsors, EV Remodeling Inc. That's owned by Eli and his family. They live here in Peachtree Corners. They do a great job if you're thinking of doing like design to build, home renovation, bathroom, kitchen. They just bring your world to life in the way you'd like it. So check them out at evremodelinginc.com. Our second sponsor is Vox Populi, Voice of the People. Would make sense. They're a company here in Peachtree Corners, also owned by a family. Andrew's the father. You have Daniel, the son, and wife in there, and daughter, and everyone else, and employees are considered family as well. And they do anything you can think of that deals with imprinting to anything, whether it's a car wrap, and they've done over, I think, over 6,000 cars and trucks that way, to trade show booths, to store displays, to imprinting on almost any object you can think of. Give them a challenge and they'll come through. So check them out at voxpopuli.com, or link in the show notes as well. So Eric, it's been a while since we've had our had an interview here.
Yeah, I think it's been a little while, Rico, but great to be here and glad to talk about whatever you think is on the mind of folks here in Peachtree Corners.
You know, there's so much going on, it's ridiculous. So, um, but let's start off with the thing from last night. There was a meeting last night about Simpsonwood Park.
Right.
There's been a lot of talk about it, about what should be done with that park. Even though there was a master plan some years ago when it was first bought, that was surveyed and put together, but never executed. But that SPLOST money, I believe, still sits there.
Well,
For
yeah, no, exactly. So they back, yeah, let's take a quick step back just in case people aren't familiar. So what's now known as Simpsonwood Park was obviously for many years since the 70s owned by the Methodist Conference, and they operated a retreat center there, and various different, and they had an office building and all sorts of things. And they decided that they didn't want to be in the retreat center business anymore.
Right.
And so they sold the property in 2015
Mhm.
to the county as a park. And so, yeah, they went through a master planning exercise to say, hey, here's the buildings on the property today. Here's what we envision: hiking trails, modern bathroom facilities, and other types of park type features.
And for people that may not remember, there was literally a resort hotel almost.
But there was, oh yeah, I tell
Yeah.
you, it was quite an operation.
Yeah.
170 hotel rooms.
Hmm.
They had a dining hall that could feed 350 people
Yep.
at a pop. They had 20,000 square feet of meeting space. They had
Yeah.
a three-story office building, which served as the offices for the North Georgia Conference of the United
Yep.
Methodist Church. That's where the bishop of that conference had his offices, her offices, and 400 parking spaces.
Right.
At one point, they had an RV campground.
Oh,
They
didn't know
they had
that.
they had a ropes course. There was they permitted overnight camping by like local
Right.
scout troops.
Right.
That a lot of different. And while it was their private property, they did permit people to come onto the property and use it in a sense like a park, right? So you could walk your dog in there. You could come and just stroll through the grounds during sunrise to sunset type of hours.
Yep.
And but they did that. They didn't have to do that. They could have had a gate at the
Mhm.
front and said, no, this is the Simpsonwood Retreat Center, and unless you're there to do to stay at the retreat center or
Right.
attend an event, that type of thing.
And most of that, if not all of it, has been removed. I mean, all the structures have been removed, the parking space.
Pretty much. I mean, the couple things that are still there that the Methodist Conference had built were one, a chapel. There's a 75 seat chapel. There's a large pavilion, and a volleyball court and a single bathroom facility. Um, Otherwise, pretty much all of the buildings are gone. There's a maintenance shed that still exists back in the woods
Right.
that the county uses. And then there is another tenant back there, which is causing a little bit of disruption right now,
Is
which
there?
is Department of Water Resources has
Oh,
their
right,
Wolf Creek pump station,
right.
and they're in the midst of upgrading the sewer line that runs to that pump station.
Yeah.
Um,
How many
and
acres? How many acres are there?
227 acres, uh,
227. And
7 acres.
the chapel is still being used as Gwinnett Park as a rental for weddings.
Correct. Yeah, I just actually posted that on my Facebook page yesterday. I happened to be on the website looking at it. If uh, Gwinnett Park, in addition to, people don't know, you can rent their pavilions. You can
Mhm.
reserve a pavilion for a birthday party or something like that. But they also have what they call premier facilities at some of their parks, like Pinckneyville Community Center falls under the Gwinnett Park
Mhm.
system. So that's off of Peachtree Boulevard, and you can rent space there. But yeah, you can rent the chapel for weddings, vow
Yeah.
renewals, anything. There's no, it doesn't have to be for a wedding or a religious service. So you can rent the the chapel. You can rent the grounds, which has a small gazebo if you want to do
Mhm.
something outdoors, or you can rent both
Yeah.
for
And
a fairly reasonable fee. It's like $125 an hour.
yeah, I was gonna say
Yeah,
it's not expensive in the
right,
scheme of things.
right.
So
So
last
then
night,
then we were saying, so they did that master planning. It was so we had a SPLOST that we voted on back in 2017,
right?
and they put the improvements to Simpsonwood on the list, but they put it in what they called tier two. And what that
Okay.
meant was tier two projects only get funded if they first fund all the tier one projects,
Okay.
and they
Okay.
they
Got it.
didn't. So the amount of money that SPLOST raised, or maybe those projects,
Mhm.
got more expensive. There wasn't any funding available for tier two projects. So then in 2023, we had an or 2020 6 years, yeah, 2023, we had another SPLOST,
Mhm.
which are running for the next 6 years. And so this time, Simpsonwood is a tier one project,
Okay.
and they have earmarked $8 million from the current SPLOST, the sales tax,
Right.
towards enhancements to Simpsonwood. And so the county, I think, it was a good move to say, hey, it's 2024 when this process started. We built that original plan 8 years earlier in 2016.
Mhm.
Let's dust it off
Right.
and go through a planning process again to see if things have changed. What are there things people would like to see in the park, or
Mhm.
and the thinking of good, like last time there were lots of discussion around should there be a fenced in dog park type area
Right.
inside the park or not, and right, so they say we want to get more input on those types of questions. So
Mhm.
they've embarked on a about a year long planning process. We're just about halfway through,
Right.
um, and it'll wrap up in August of this year with a final plan. And so,
So
last night was like the third of 6 meetings
yeah.
uh, to look at different plans. Um,
So the a lot of people that make up the committee, I guess. Isn't there?
what they did was, so same thing they'd done back in 2016. They got a steering committee together of
Right.
primarily nearby residents. And so they did the same thing again this time. First, they asked people who had been on the committee in 2016, hey, did you want to do this again? And
Right.
about half of those folks said, sure. Like one of my neighbors here in Neely Farm, who was on the committee then, said yeah. They then asked the city of Peachtree Corners, hey, and I volunteered or
Yeah.
didn't step back fast enough.
Good for you.
Uh,
No,
and,
we need a good rep on there. That's good.
and then they solicited, and they said, hey, Simpsonwood Methodist Church, do you want to have somebody on the committee? So it's sort of local organization representatives. And then they opened it up to the general public. They had a big community meeting at Simpsonwood Methodist Church,
Mhm.
and took applications from people. You could you could just apply by email. They took all of those applications and they said, well, one, we can't have a committee of like 60 people. That's not practical. And they also said, we want a variety of members, but concentrated here in Peachtree Corners. So of the 31 committee members, 27 are Peachtree Corners residents.
That's
Um,
that's actually very good considering it's
yeah,
a county
yeah,
park.
Right.
not a city park. Uh,
Right.
maybe one day it could be a city park, but not
Yeah.
now.
Well, I think yeah, we do have in a sense. I don't think the town green is our city park today,
Yes,
right? So
yes,
and it has many of the same elements. It has
for
uh,
sure.
a playground, a lawn, a stage,
Hmm.
bathrooms, trash
Yeah,
cans that have to be
yeah.
emptied, all those kinds of
Yeah.
things. So yeah.
So,
So what
so it
what,
was.
what they did tonight was they um, uh, the prior meeting about 6 weeks ago, they had presented three concept plans, three different maps,
Mhm.
and each of them was slightly different. And so, based on the feedback that the committee provided last time, they merged all that into a single map and
Okay.
said, "Hey, what do we think about this?" It's still not they didn't even call it a preliminary plan. There's still two more stages to go. They said we took all your feedback and we fit it in here. And
What
so
what
that
can you what
yeah
can you say was left in that map, or what is the version at this
yeah
point, the highlights of it?
sure yeah a couple of things come to mind. I think the first thing you know what I think was big news coming out of last night was and I sort of prompted this because I pushed them on it, is that a commitment by the county to keep the park natural
Hmm.
and specifically to be stay within the constraints of the conservation easement. So it, when they bought the park,
Hmm.
there wasn't any, if you will, underlying or overarching boundaries around or limits on what the park could be, right? So they could have had playing fields with lights and that
Right.
sort of thing.
Sure.
But the steering committee back in 2016 pushed hard to say we need to put what's called a conservation easement, which an easement is a restriction placed on land.
Right.
And so in 2020, the Board of Commissioners, the Gwinnett Board of Commissioners, voted unanimously to put a conservation easement on the land. And what it says is, one, the land can only ever be used as a park for the general public. So it can't be developed into houses or
Right. Right.
used for commercial property. And then it also limits the types of things that you could do at this park. Like it can't have active playing fields. It can
Hmm.
have a meadow where you run around and toss a frisbee, but it can't have
Right.
soccer fields. It can't have lights, lighted playing fields. Um, so, for example, there's a volleyball court there today, and you can keep that can stay there, but you can't add lights to it,
Got
right?
it.
So
Okay.
it tended to
And
be,
that's in respect to the residential area around it, I guess,
yeah. I think
and
that
to
that
the
was
nature
based
of the
on feedback, and also I think the other thing that we pushed them on for that conservation easement was the priorities for the things that are going to happen at Simpsonwood. And right at the top of the list last night that they committed to was that it's about the primary purpose of the park is the natural resources that are there at the park. And so there was a lot of talk last night about investing in the park to do things like to restore the meadows.
Mm.
One of the meadows right now is full of dirt and rock from the sewer project, which
Right.
the Department of Water Resources will remove, and then getting that meadow back to what they call the Piedmont Prairie. I guess that's the type of
Really.
meadows that we have here on
Okay.
the southeastern part of the U.S. Um, so that was big news, and in fact they used the word in perpetuity, the conservation easement restrictions, and I pushed again, and they even said, "Well, Eric, we're going to go even, uh, you know, be more restricted even than what that document says. Like that document says, you could have theoretically have pickleball courts, right, without lights, but you could have." And they said, "No, we're not doing that. You could have mountain biking trails under a conservation easement." And they said, "No, we're not doing mountain biking trails." And both the head of the the park planning process, as well as the director of Gwinnett Parks himself, Chris Miner, was there, and they both publicly said, "No, this is our commitment to this park." So that was exciting. The other things they shared or in the new plan, they had in prior concepts they did have a dog park area, like a
Hmm.
fenced in 2 acre area for dogs.
Right.
That's not in the plan anymore.
Mm.
There was a small overnight camping area, which the church had actually permitted camping in a section
Right.
for scout troops. Right, that's been pulled out of the plan. Uh, they've,
So
I don't
wait,
know.
so there's no more camping there at all then?
Correct, correct.
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't know if that's like immediately enforced, but they're saying the concept plan that they had shared last time had
right.
kept there's sort of like these 10 little tent sites near
Yeah.
somewhere near the front of the park off to the left. So they've taken those out of the plan. The other thing the in the concept drawings there was going to be there were going to be two multi-use trails and one which would go from like the center parking area down to the river and back. And then the other one, there would be a loop around the Great Lawn, the big meadow that's there today.
Right.
And
Right.
they've taken that second one, the one around the Great Meadow, off the plan.
Right.
There's still a path, but it's not for their definition of multi-use trail is a paved, improved trail that
Right.
someone in a wheelchair, stroller,
Right. Right.
a kid on a push bike, could
So,
use.
yeah.
So there's now down to one multi-use trail, just the loop that would go down to the river and come back up, sort of along the current road. I don't know if
Right.
you've been in Simpsonwood, past
Hmm.
the chapel
Are
down
they are
to
they
the
going
river.
to improve? I think there's a mulch trail or natural trail there, or two at the 1.2 miles or 2 miles. Are they going to keep or improve those
Well,
trails?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, they talked about that
And
a lot. They sort of have three categories of trails. The first one, what they would call multi-use,
right.
uh, which is a paved
Hmm.
asphalt or potentially concrete with a maximum of 5% grade, right? So that it's reasonable
Right.
for a wheelchair user or some
Right.
or pushing a stroller.
Okay.
Then they have what they called accessible trails, which would be wherever possible, natural surface. Might be if it's steep or it's crossing a creek, then there'd have to be a bridge. If it's steep, they'd have to potentially do asphalt or concrete there because of the erosion, right? As
Hmm.
people walk up and down a steep section.
Sure.
Um, and that's
Yeah.
what they call the accessible trails. And then all the rest what they called hiking trails would just be natural surface trails.
Hmm.
But those trails would still be intentionally laid out, right? So what we have today in the park is, the Methodist Church when they operate as a retreat center, they didn't necessarily plan these trails. So they're sort of
Right.
all,
Right.
homegrown rabbit trails, right?
Like
People
goat
just
trails
walking and say,
almost.
I want
Yeah.
to go that way. And so you have some situations like you have trails like right next to each other in parallel. You have trails that go up a pretty steep section rather than having like a little switchback. And so they would come in and lay out those hiking trails and put signage. And, you can, if you want to, you can go off trail and walk through the leaves.
Mhm.
They're not going to be stopped there.
Right.
One of the things I asked about, because I'd heard feedback from my constituents in Revington, which is the neighborhood along the north side,
Hmm.
um, is that there is a current amateur design trail or just an organically occurring trail that comes really close to their homes, to their backyards.
Okay.
And so the county committed that no, when we lay out the official trails, there'd be a goal of 100 to 150-foot buffer between the trail and any adjoining residential
Yeah, and
parcel.
that would make sense.
Right.
Still, I would imagine there's going to be because the bathrooms are really bad. I think for even the scouts to be using. So they're going to probably improve that, I would imagine, right?
They would. The current facility is quite old and
Yes.
compares very, very poorly. I had a chance to take a tour
Yes.
2 Saturdays ago with other members of the committee, and we went to some of the current parks. And yeah, the restrooms do not meet the Gwinnett standard, and so they would take that one down, replace it, and then they would also add a second one down towards the chapel, actually a little
Okay.
past the chapel. So if you're down at the
Yeah.
river and if you have a young child and have a bathroom emergency, you don't have to
Uh-huh.
make it all the way up to the front, or even if you're having an event at the chapel right now,
Right.
if you're it's quite a little walk. You almost want to get in a golf
Yeah.
cart or get your car to go use the restroom.
Oh,
And
I mean, yeah, I
yeah,
agree, and that's a great idea. I didn't even think about that. Holding events there that would make sense. Are
right.
they, and they're adding also, I would imagine they're adding some additional parking because there's never enough parking for even the current use over there,
Yeah,
apparently.
so what they talked about is, yeah, so when it was a retreat center, there were over 400 parking spaces
Yeah.
between the retreat center and the office building. Right now, they're about 90, depending on how you count, because there's some gravel, that don't have areas that don't have specific, line spots, right?
Right.
So they talked about three um, paved areas with 30 spaces approximately each. That would be 90, about the same as there's now.
Right.
And then down near the chapelish area, a overflow parking area, which would be just grassy, like hardened grass surface.
Pervious or
Right.
impervious.
Yeah, it would still be pervious, right? And it would, if you had an event like the Walk Through Bethlehem
Yeah.
event that Methodist Church does every year, or you had,
Right.
I mean, I was thinking, it's a 75-seat chapel. If all of your guests come two to a car, that's still 30 cars or
Oh, yeah.
35 cars,
Right.
right? Um, and then plus the normal visitors on that day. So anyway, so they ended up with about 90 paved spaces, and I think it was 60 unpaved,
Okay.
some
That's
sort
and
of
that's yeah,
grassy surface.
that sounds reasonable. Are they
So it was
still
150 total compared to the 400 that were there before.
well, even the way it's split up and stuff, it's not all one big area. So that's better looking and better use of the land, I bet. Outcrops overlooking the river. I think there were two planned. Is that still part of
Yep,
the
they still showed those. I mean, I
yeah.
think what they've I heard this back in 2016 as well, serving on that steering committee, is that the purpose of the overlooks is actually to protect the environment. You say, well, how does it protect the environment to build these overlooks? And the answer is,
Mhm.
as humans, as soon as we know there's water nearby, we
Yes.
want to go see it.
Yes.
We want to go touch it. We're just sort of instinctually drawn to do that. So they know that if they don't provide these overlooks, essentially outlets for that uh, instinctual drive, people will push their way through the undergrowth. They'll
Yeah.
try to climb down the banks, that sort of
Oh,
thing. So yeah,
and that
they still have.
yeah, and that happened at Jones Bridge Park. I think that's why they eventually started years back putting out crops and rocks and the steps leading into the river and stuff.
Right, and well, and what
Same
they've
issue.
had to do at Jones Bridge is they've fenced in certain areas to try to let the
So,
bank recover, right?
yes.
Because, and we actually saw this on our tour. One of the little parking lots we parked in, and we were walking this way. We said, "What is this fencing around these trees?" And they said, "Well, we're trying to let these are new trees here, and if we didn't fence them in, just people walk where they. But people always take the shortest route, not
Yes.
necessarily thinking about what's happening to the tree roots and that sort of thing. So
Yeah. Any surprises or anything additional or something different from the
no, I think
previous?
it's pretty everything that yeah, nothing new added to
Okay.
the concept plans. More things, a shift in what I viewed as a shift in focus about natural resource management, the restoration of the meadows, better management of the forest. One of the things we had learned was that about 20 years ago, there was a pine bark beetle infestation in the park, and
Hmm.
so the church actually clear cut some big sections of trees.
Wow.
Um, if you're going down the center road along your right. And
Mm.
then they didn't necessarily focus on forest management. So it grew back as sort of dense scrub pines, which
Yeah.
actually now makes it more likely to have another pine bark beetle infestation because the trees are so close together.
Wow.
And so the ecologist who's on consulting with the park system had made some recommendations about here's the type of what a healthy forest looks like, and the mix of trees that you have, and
Right.
just a bunch of scrub pines and a dense thicket is not an ideal environment.
I gotta say, Gwinnett Parks has won quite a few national park awards. So, and I was on the park authority some years ago, but it doesn't seem to have changed a lot. I mean, they do great work, so I have all the respect for them. Um,
Yeah, yeah, they mentioned last night that they had been up for an award and they lost
yeah,
out to the city of Minneapolis park system,
really.
and
Oh,
one of
wow.
the where they got dinged was that they didn't have a natural resource plan uh, as part of their planning process, specifically looking at trees and
Oh, wow.
vegetation, and not that they weren't doing it, but they didn't
Yeah.
have it as a formal part of their planning process.
Okay.
And so they they're doing that now for Simpsonwood, and they mentioned two other parks I've forgotten the names.
We're not.
So, yeah.
Um, so let's, I mean, if I think that covered pretty
Yeah,
much
yeah,
that.
just to wrap it up. So what happens now? So three more formal meetings of the steering committee between now and August. So they're just going to keep refining the plan. What we're supposed to see next time is a more refined version of this single concept plan. Then the next one we'll see costs, and which would then potentially say, here's how you're going to have to phase it, right? Maybe the total plan is $12 million or something, right? To do
Yeah,
all the things on the plan. So here's how they would phase it in. And
okay,
then the final step, who's approving this, as you mentioned, it's a county park, not a city park. So this will go to the Gwinnett Parks Recreation Authority.
right,
They vote on the plan, and then it goes to the Board of Commissioners for final approval and funding.
right, right. And we have two, if it's the same, we have two appointees from our commissioner that represents us on
Uh,
that.
right, yeah,
uh,
from District One, yeah, and
Yeah.
there are two members of one. Two of them are from the Parks Authority. Eric Thigpen, who's the current chair,
Right.
uh,
Okay.
and then I forgot her name. Another woman who she actually lives in Lawrenceville, so she's presumably not a District One representative. But yeah.
Okay. So let's segue then into this. So there's another park here in the city, Jones Bridge Park. I mean, there's several besides these two, but so Jones Bridge Park is another one that has had some issues. People are a bit upset with things that go on there sometimes on off hours or
Mhm.
even during the weekends where garbage is overrunning maybe or just things are happening. Do you have any
Sure. Yeah, I
insight
think
into that?
yeah. There's a group of local residents who've formed. I don't know if they have an official name. We'll call them the Friends of Jones Bridge Park, right? So they live nearby or they enjoy the park,
Mhm.
and they had reached out and gotten in touch with the park system, and so they've had a couple meetings, at least two, and I think gotten a very good response from both the park system and also Gwinnett Police, who's responsible for patrolling the parks,
Right.
as well as our own city marshals who've helped out as well. And so I attended a recent meeting of this Jones Bridge Park community meeting, and so one of the things that I recall was, there had been problems with people parking outside of designated parking spaces, right?
Mhm.
And and specifically, there is actually a good amount of parking in the park because if you go farther into the park up towards the
Yeah,
soccer fields, there's parking there. But
sure.
people were just being a little lazy and saying,
Yeah,
I don't want to go to the soccer fields. I want to go to the river. So I'm just going to park on the grass or pull
yeah.
over, pop two of my wheels up on the curb. So Gwinnett Police, starting in July, had gotten more aggressive about
Mm,
warning and then towing. So they towed 45 cars
right.
since July, although since October, they've only had to tow two. So the message seems to be getting out. Uh,
Well,
find a
well,
parking
yeah.
space.
Well, the weather is getting cooler, and come the
But,
summer, we'll
well,
see what happens.
there could be right, fewer people there. The
Yeah.
trash, the county had committed to adding additional trash cans. Rico, when I go to a park or any public space or even our town green, and
Mhm.
I see an overflowing trash can, I don't see a problem with citizens. I see a problem with the city or the county that we're not emptying that trash
Cleaning
can.
it, yes.
Right? Because if it
Uh,
what I see is that somebody tried to bring their trash to the trash can, but it was full, and they presumably they didn't want to take it in their car, and so
yeah.
they put it next to the trash can. So that says we either need to empty them more often or we need to have more of them.
Yeah.
And that's not to say that, as in any park, any public space, no, there certainly is trash not near trash cans down along the
Hmm.
river or something,
Hmm.
and that's the yeah, sometimes people treat public spaces differently than they do their personal spaces,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
um,
Yeah.
the other thing that the county had committed to reacting to the complaints about after hours activity. All
Right.
Gwinnett parks close at dusk,
Hmm.
and the so the county has or is going to put a cutoff timer on the power outlets in the pavilions at Jones Bridge so that
Oh,
you can't there's no so there won't be
okay.
power after 6 p.m. or I don't know, literally if it detects that it's dusk or
Right.
something like that.
Okay.
The other thing that the city had done is we had installed a license plate reader camera on the road that leading into Jones Bridge Park,
Hmm.
and it's programmed to, if it sees sees a car, sees a license plate after hours, it sends an alert to Gwinnett PD.
Okay.
And if they have, maybe we can talk about that a little bit. If they have an available officer, uh, that officer will respond to that alert. And the major said, West Precinct Commander had said that they had since July they had been to the park 150 times.
Wow.
Uh, so that's almost once a day,
It
if I'm
sounds
remembering.
like that.
So that seems to be working. Um, the
Were they going to do, I know someone was asking about 24-hour camera surveillance, like in the park, but
in the park, yeah. So once again, the city had offered to uh, subsidize purchase, through our Curiosity Lab. We have pretty good connections with vendors and we don't mind trialing new technology. And
sure.
that we said we'd help get cameras inside the park. At this meeting, this might have been resolved since that meeting. They were working on improving the internet infrastructure and the power availability. But
Mhm.
essentially, what you do is you replace like the top of one of the street lights in the park with
Mhm.
a new head unit, it's called, which would
Yeah.
have cameras. So the city is still happy to help support that effort.
Okay. So, these things progress. I mean, we could always talk about at another point, the city taking over those parks and they become city parks. But then again, we'd have to stand up a parks department. Uh,
Right. Yeah. Right, yeah. So because right now, our staff of
right.
28, whatever we're at right now, we do, I think, a pretty good job of managing the town green. But
Oh yeah. Yeah.
yeah, but that's managing a 230-acre park like Simpsonwood or uh, Jones Bridge is much smaller, but it has
Yeah.
active playing fields with I think you actually wrote an article about it in Peachtree Corners magazine, the
Yes. Hmm.
Jones Bridge Football Club, I think was the
Right.
Jones
50-year
Bridge FC.
anniversary. Yeah. Yeah. Football and
Right.
soccer
Yeah.
as a soccer club,
So
right?
there, and to maybe wrap it up and draw a distinction with Simpsonwood, Jones Bridge is certainly not under a conservation easement. It's an active, what they call an active park with
Yes.
playing fields with lights, and it's in sort of a mini version of what we have over at the Pinckneyville Park,
Yeah.
right, with
Yeah.
football fields
For sure.
so
For
a
sure.
different experience for sure.
Yeah. I mean, we have good parks around here. So, um, all right, let's move away a little bit from the parks and let's talk a little bit about what just recently got voted on. There's this trend of doing office conversions to apartments or hotels to apartments or multifamily. So there's one that you were telling me just before we started the show, that Gwinnett Housing Authority is taking over and will be managing. Um, and this is in an area by Jimmy Carter and Peachtree Boulevard. I have to stop from saying Peachtree Industrial
Hey,
Boulevard.
man, I introduced the resolution to change the name, so I'm glad to see you. Yeah,
Yes,
after Chamblee and Doraville had changed Peachtree Industrial Boulevard to
yes,
Peachtree Boulevard,
yes.
and G, uh, Georgia Department of Transportation changed the signs on 285 that
Finally.
now they just say Peachtree Boulevard. So they
Yeah,
said, well, I said, well, we need to update the name as well. But yeah,
yeah.
so um, a couple of years ago, six years ago, the staff was thinking ahead, and they created a new option in our residential code that would permit a extended stay hotel
Mhm.
to be converted into apartments through a specific process. Um, Normally residential and hotel space, different sections of the code. But we said,
Mhm.
as we particularly, unfortunately, our friends to the east in the city of Norcross have had some challenges with extended stay hotels that they essentially go down in quality, go down in safety and security, and become a problem.
Mhm.
And so the the on Jimmy Carter Boulevard, just when you come off Peachtree Boulevard, there's a car wash there. There's the Crown Sports Bar, across the street from
Right.
what I still think of as the old LA Fitness Shopping Center. Uh, is there were actually two extended stay hotels just down a short road, and one of those particularly problematic, regular visits from the police, and so the Gwinnett Housing Authority said we'd be interested in purchasing that property, and but we don't want to run it as an extended stay hotel, right? Extended stay hotels are you rent by the week, um, and it's a very tough environment for the people living there because it's a hotel. You don't have any tenant rights,
Hmm.
so you can be kicked out without notice because you're a hotel resident, not a lesser, right, or lessee, and uh, uh, and it creates this challenging environment. And so they said we want to convert it into apartments,
Hmm.
which will be rented by the month, by the year, type of thing. And so they came to staff. Staff worked with them on some conditions for the property, one of which was that the total number of units would stay the same, 73
Hmm.
units, and that they would do refurbishment and investment in it. Our ordinance actually says to do this conversion, you have to put a washer and dryer in each unit,
Hmm.
right, to make it a true
Oh,
apartment.
okay.
They said these units are pretty small. There's already a central laundry facility, and could we get a waiver from that one requirement? And that the staff recommended approval of that. So they came before City Council last Tuesday, and they presented a couple of the questions I asked. Was talk about who are the target market for these apartments, and
Hmm.
they said as the housing authority they have specific objectives of what the type of housing they're trying to provide, and so their target market is twofold. It's uh, young adults who've aged out of foster care are no longer eligible to be part of the foster care system, so that's 18 to 24 uh, years old, and then also seniors. So they have low income, fixed income seniors who are struggling to find a safe place to live, and
Hmm.
that they have some experience both here in Metro Atlanta, but in other states, of having a mix of young people and seniors creates this great synergy. And they also, one of the questions that I also asked was, staff on site, right? And so they said, yep, of the 73 units, two of them would be for staff. One would be for a property manager, full-time
Hmm.
property manager who would live on the property. And the second would be for a case manager from the housing authority who would provide, social services to both of those constituents or types of residents. And so that request passed unanimously, which sometimes when it comes with housing and the word apartments, we don't always get unanimous votes on
Yes.
council.
Yes.
But this one, I think everybody agreed. Don't want to speak for my other council members, but it certainly appeared to me that replacing a increasingly problematic extended stay hotel
Yeah.
with apartments that would serve uh, uh, underserved communities
Yeah.
was a
Interesting.
great change.
Interestingly enough, the other day, I forget who I was speaking to, it was someone in the police department, and they were mentioning that area of Jimmy Carter and Peachtree
Peachtree Corners,
Boulevard. I
pushing, yeah.
keep wanting to say PIB at least, but instead of PB, but like
PB, yeah, we got PB and
PB.
jelly.
Yeah, so that area, if you take that as a and work your way out as a circle, that is the higher crime area, if you will, moving out from that circle in this area. And you mentioned that that was obviously an extended stay hotel, and there's one right next to it actually as well. And these are well, now that there's one there, that's one of what, three
Yeah, I
left
think
in the city?
there might be three left in the city
Yeah,
after this one.
yeah,
Um, and then there are a couple right on our border, right? People don't always necessarily know where Peachtree Corner ends and Norcross starts.
right.
Uh, and we're working to support City of Norcross as well as they deal with these challenges. And I certainly don't want to, um, blame the residents of the extended stay community. And
No, I know.
right before I started, we talked about that the City of Norcross happens to have a housing authority, and they had done a study. They'd actually gone and knocked on doors and said, "Hey, how long have you been in an extended stay? Why are you here?" And they found different types of residents. Uh, those that were families uh,
Mhm.
uh, one of the most common reasons they were an extended stay was not that they didn't have jobs and couldn't afford apartment rents. It's
Mhm.
that they didn't have enough cash reserves to fund the security deposit and the first month's rent.
That's right.
So let's call it 2 months rent. So
Yeah.
getting that, and so like Norcross is looking at creating may have already done so, a grant program to say, hey, if we can get you into an apartment, if you've got a job, you're going to pass the background check at the apartment, that sort of thing. We'll help, give you the table stakes to get into the
That's a
apartment.
and that's a great idea. And that's yeah, that's really a good idea. It's like someone like a business owner investing in their property to a degree, and then but the operating funds could handle the operation, but maybe they can't pay off the debt. And
Right,
that's how that feels like to me. You want to be able to do it. You can pay for it, but it's getting over that hurdle. So
right,
um,
right.
the before we get I know you have limited time, so I just want to make sure we cover also the next thing, which is the upcoming elections,
Yeah.
right? You're running for re-election in post four as an
Two.
at-large
I'm
seat,
no two. I
right?
know I'm District Two. I'm post to District Two.
Oh,
Four is Councilmember Joe Sawyer. Uh,
okay.
and six is Councilmember Ware Gratwick. So uh, yes,
Okay.
this November
Yeah,
we
sorry
have
about that.
no worries. This November we have city elections. So we have elections every. There's seven of us on council, the mayor plus the six council seats.
Right.
Uh, Half of us plus the mayor are elected in 2 years in one cycle, and then the other three seats are elected 2 years later. And so we call that sort of our big and our small election, right? Because one is four seats,
Right.
the mayor plus three, and one is three. So this year it's
Right.
the small election.
Uh-huh.
So posts 2, 4, and 6 will be up for reelection. The election is like every election the first Tuesday in November, so November 4th. And one interesting thing about this year's election is because our city elections in the odd years, we don't normally have other countywide elections happening at the same
Right.
time,
Right.
uh, right? Because the presidential election is in the even years, and then the midterms are in between that. But that's an even year, and as well as our gubernatorial and our state legislative elections. But every now and then, the county has an election in an odd year, and it could be something like in 2015 there was the most recent Board of Education SPLOST. Um, this year, there actually will be a countywide election because of a state mandate that it's finally time to have some elections for the Public Service Commission. There was some
Mhm.
litigation over the PSC, and so elections were delayed, but two of the seats on the Public Service Commission will be on the ballot this November. So on November 4th, there will be at least two elections, the PSC, and if you live in a city here in Gwinnett, there'll be city elections. And a personal, pet peeve of mine has been the fact that when that happens, that we have to go to two different places to vote.
Yes.
And the reason is that Gwinnett, in contrast to all the other counties in the metro Atlanta area, and in fact, I haven't been able to identify a single county in Georgia other than Gwinnett who doesn't offer the cities inside the county the option of combining elections.
Yeah.
And this, I've been working on this project a long time because when I started this after actually back in 2016 when I first ran, I was in a special election in an even year. I was in 2016, and so to vote in my election, you had to go to two places in
Yeah.
May of 2016. So I said, this is dumb.
Mm.
And first, I was told, well, the Board of Elections has a policy against providing city elections services. And so
Yeah.
I went to the Board of Elections and lobbied them and said, this is dumb. And so I got them to rescind that policy. And so now, uh, here in 2025, this is the first time since 2013 so that
Mhm.
for the city of Peachtree Corners that on the same day as our city election, there will be a countywide election. And so what we're asking the county now to do is please just tell us what the cost would be if we were to tag along on the election you already have to have. You already have to open up all 156 polling places. You already have to have your 3 weeks of early voting. We know it's an electronic, ballot that can, when Rico walks in, it can say, "Hey, Rico, in addition to the PSC, because you live in Peachtree Corners,
Right.
I'm going to show you these additional, races." And we know they can do it, Rico, because in 2013, 12 years ago,
Mhm.
that was still during our 2 year transition period with the county when we first
Yeah.
became a city.
Yeah.
They did this exact thing for us. We had our 2013 council elections, and we even had a referendum about this tax allocation districts that people voted for.
Yeah.
So we know they can do it. They just right now have been sort of dragging their feet on telling us what it would cost for us to hire them to
How
manage our
many
election.
how many precincts are in the city of Peachtree Corners?
Yeah, so if you look at the county precincts, because when the lines were drawn, they didn't
Mhm.
necessarily that predates the city existing.
Right.
So it's 11 or 12, of which nine, if I recall correctly, 8 or 9 are wholly inside the city, right?
Right.
So every voter at that polling place, like the Good Age building in Jones Bridge Park,
Right.
is a resident of the city of Peachtree Corners,
Okay.
and then the other three are split. But which they already know how to do this. That they have other precincts where they have
Sure.
some of the people vote in some
Yeah.
state house race and some people don't. And
Yeah.
the computer system takes care of that. It just
Yeah.
when you log in or when you check in,
Yes.
you
I
know,
can't imagine. I mean, it costs us what, 50,000 to
yeah,
run?
we generally budget $50,000. Yeah,
Thousand.
our Kim Sherrick, our city clerk, does a great job. She comes
Yeah.
in below that, but it's also just the the confusion and the inconvenience because
Yeah.
here's what's happened. People are going to for the PSC. Somebody's upset about their electrical bill. The
Mhm.
Public Service Commission regulates Georgia Power and other electrical monopolies. That's their
Yeah.
primary function. So they're going to go vote early, let's say, over at Pinckneyville Community Center,
Yeah.
and then they're not going to see the city races on there, and they're
That's
going
right.
to and then they go, I don't want to have to do this again. What? Or
Yes.
they're going to come to City Hall on election day, vote in the city races because you're going to have local candidates trying to get their vote out, and then they're
Right.
going to, well, where's the PSC thing? Well, you're gonna have to go over to Peachtree Elementary. You're gonna
Right.
have to go to PCBC, and they're going to go, well, I got to go to work. I don't got time to do that, and you
Right.
know,
No, I
it's
agree.
just
I mean, even under 50,000, I mean, how much can it possibly cost the county to add for what we're talking about when they already have the precincts in place? Everything's in place. They just have to, really, it's almost a programming
it
issue,
is. It's
right?
literally just programming to
Right.
say if voter reside in Peachtree Corners, then
Uh-huh.
show these races on the ballot. Here, and we know from 2013, Rico, the last time this exact situation happened, they charged us $35,000.
There you go. Okay,
So
so
yeah, to add some inflation in there, so okay, it's 50K. Even if it's more, even if it's 60, even if it's more than
uh-huh.
we theoretic, it's still from Eric's point of view, that's still the right thing to do for the voters.
Yeah,
Is that
I totally agree, and I'm glad that you did that because I mean I've always thought that it was stupid to have to do that to go to two different places, and not just the the pain of doing that, if you will, but it's almost undemocratic because um, it forces the well-intentioned voter to have to go to two places. And not everyone is like that, right? So you end up disenfranchising quite a few people, by forcing them to split up and making choices. Uh, Now, granted, there's early voting, but we don't have early voting in the city. You vote on that day, right? I mean, there's absentee
well,
ballots,
now last couple
but
elections we've have had
yeah,
a
we
smaller
do.
period
Yes.
of election voting, but
Okay.
it's generally because our city clerk, she and this is one of the reasons why she's been able to keep
Yes.
the cost low is that we're open from like 9 to 6, right? We're not open
Right.
7 a.m. 7 p.m. When the county does it, I love what they do there is they're open for like 20 straight days, Saturdays included, at
Yeah.
7 a.m. to 7 p.m. So you don't have to remember, because everybody
Right.
knows
Right.
election day.
Right.
Um, but also for the cities in Gwinnett, we do have a few cities in Gwinnett who do hire a county to manage their election, but those are cities who cross the boundary. So, like the city of Auburn, which is in
Mm.
northern Gwinnett, is partially in Walton County. So they hire Walton County to manage their elections, and Walton is much, much smaller than Gwinnett, but they say, sure, we're happy to do that.
Yeah.
Um, it reminds me, if I recall, back in 2018, we had a city special election to vote on something called the brunch bill. This was about whether restaurants could serve alcohol before
Oh,
noon.
right. Yeah.
And so for us to, and we just, that the first opportunity to do that was in 2018, but our next scheduled election wasn't until, November 2019. But we as a council said, we don't want to wait because we don't want our restaurants to be at a disadvantage. If Johns Creek does it,
Hmm.
then, and people want their mimosa or their
Yeah.
Bloody Mary at 11:30 in the morning. So we said we're going to go ahead and do the election. So what we had to do, our city clerk had to, you know, get the polling place, which yes is our community chest room, hire the poll workers, advertise the election, all that, just to ask this with a single yes or no question. So she did all that. We held the election. Um, Cost us about $20,000, and we had 4% turnout. Rico, 4% of the people in the city
Huh.
came out.
Wow.
City of Johns Creek did the exact same thing on the same day, but all they had to do, they picked up the phone, they called Fulton County, and they said, "Run our election." And Fulton County did everything else.
Yeah.
They had 64% turnout
Oh, wow.
participation in their brunch bill.
Okay.
And then here, to add insult to injury, Gwinnett County, for the unincorporated parts of Gwinnett,
Hmm.
right? So because only about 20% of the county is inside a city,
Right.
they also had to hold the brunch bill referendum. They did it on the same day as ours,
Yeah.
and they had 55% participation
Wow.
across the county, but they wouldn't add ours to their ballot back in 2018. So I'm pushing hard on this issue. I got
Yeah.
the council unanimously endorsed a resolution that I had drafted that called on the county. All we're asking for right now is please give us an estimate of the cost.
Yeah. I,
State law already allows us to hand over our election management responsibilities to a county. State law already permits this,
mhm.
but we said for us to decide whether we need to do that, because I don't know, the county comes back and says it's $300,000. Why they would come, I don't know, but let's just say they did, right? We might say, whoa, no, that's not going
Right.
to work.
Right. Right. Sure.
But I say if they come back anywhere near close to 50,000, then I think there would be, I'm certainly going to argue
Oh,
passionately that we should find the elections.
I'm totally behind you on that one. Um, yeah. So I don't even see that this should be an argument on their part.
Yeah,
But
yeah, we're trying to figure it out because, like as I said, I researched this. Every single county around us,
yeah.
even Little Hall County, I guess they're not
Mhm.
that little anymore. To our north, they offer it. The
Yeah.
city of Gainesville, Dunwoody to our west, DeKalb
How
runs their elections.
how late do they have until well, how late do we have until they have to until
Yeah, we
yeah,
still have
do it?
some time. The biggest not stumbling block is we have to update your official voting, right? So right now, if you look at your voter registration card, it
Mhm.
says for federal and state elections, you vote at, like, for me, I vote at Peachtree Elementary School. But it
Right.
says for city elections, I vote at City Hall. So legally, we have to tell people to
Yeah, sure.
update your voter registration, your polling place. And there's a postcard that gets mailed out when that happens. So the election's November 4th, early voting, if we piggyback on the county and they do 3 weeks of early voting. So yeah, we need to decide probably within the next 45 days or so,
Yeah, I was gonna say.
just to get, because what would happen is the county comes back with a cost estimate. We would then also have to negotiate an agreement with them. Like
Mhm.
in DeKalb for their cities, like they say, um, we'll run your elections for you, but we don't want to do the candidate qualification piece. That's where you show up at
Mhm.
City Hall, you sign a form, you write a check,
Right. Right.
and our clerk says, no, that's perfectly fine. she already has to do that today, so that's not a problem at all. And the other thing, like those agreements say, is if there's a lawsuit over this election,
Right.
the city has to be the one to, to bear the burden of that lawsuit.
Okay.
And our
That's,
answer is, of course, that's
yeah.
fine. We're,
Yeah.
it's our election. We're just hiring you to run it,
Yeah.
right?
To
And if
facilitate it.
somebody
Yeah.
wants to sue over it, yeah, we'll take the lawsuit. Yeah, that's perfectly
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah. That
So
makes sense.
get a cost estimate, get a contract, and there's, as I said, with lots and lots of other counties doing this, there's lots of examples of how to do that. And then move forward
Yeah.
and get it done so that when people show up in November, they can go to one place.
Excellent. Eric, I appreciate you spending your time with us.
Yeah,
Eric Christ, he's city councilman post two, right? Running for
yeah, yeah.
re-election. You know, ChatGPT just got that information wrong. I was being a
Well,
little lazy and I
can't,
used
you
ChatGPT.
can't trust that Chat GPT. But yeah, we'll
Yeah.
have, so for city elections, we don't have primaries, right? So that
Yeah.
everything happened for us. The candidates will qualify in August. That's when you officially become a candidate
Right.
for re-election. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Because it's a nonpartisan race.
that's correct. Yeah, we don't run with party labels.
Yeah.
A few big cities like Atlanta have run partisan elections, but
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
538 cities in Georgia, the vast majority are nonpartisan
Right.
elections.
Well, we've been speaking to Eric Christ. Thank you, Eric. Appreciate you sharing the information on Simpsonwood Park, on the elections and all these things. There's definitely going to be a lot of stuff to talk about over the next 3 months, 4 months, that's going to be coming up. So I'm sure we'll have you back again at some point to talk about a bit about some of these things.
Sure, happy. I was
Um,
happy to do it.
yeah, appreciate it. I want to say thank you also to EV Remodeling Inc. and to Vox Populi for being supporters, not just of these podcasts, which includes this, Prime Lunchtime with City Manager and Urban Ebb, but also of Peachtree Corners Magazine and Southwest Gwinnett magazines. So appreciate them supporting us, our journalism, and the ability to put out this stuff. And to, listen, we've been doing this, I've been doing this for 7 years, and nothing. Things just get more complicated as we go, and having media out there to be able to bring people like Eric on to explain things is really important to do that. So if you found this podcast, whether it's video or audio, whether you found it on Spotify or on YouTube, please share it with your friends that live here in the city. Let them know what we're doing and let them know what's going on. Um, so thank you again, Eric. Appreciate it. Appreciate you
Thanks,
being.
Rico.
Oh, let me one more thing, I guess. If anyone wants to sign on to your really, really good newsletter, I love your newsletter. You give your opinions on things, you share all sorts of stuff going on. Tell them where to find that and how to get subscribed to it.
Yeah, the simplest thing to do is because the URL is a little complicated for the MailChimp sign up form, but if you go to my Christopher City Council Facebook page, it's a pinned link on that page. That's probably the easiest way to direct people to
And
that.
they can find that by searching, is it Vote for Christ?
Well, no, yeah,
Or
just go in Facebook, Christopher City Council.
Chris? Okay.
We'll
I
take
see
you
that.
there. Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Yep.
All right, hang in there with me for a minute. Everyone else, thank you again. Leave your reviews, your comments. There'll be links in the show notes as well for most of what we've discussed. So check that out.